Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're well, I hope you're all staying safe, I hope you're all staying inside. Stay inside, save lives, as Boris would say. Right now it's getting dark, so it's probably going to go dark in the back of this video. So I thought I'd do a quick video because it was requested heavily, I might add, on my Instagram story. And that's pretty much what it's like at the moment at the hospitals, what it's like to work there, what it's like to be part of the NHS, I suppose. Now, I just want to say at the start of this video, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not any form of medically trained staff. The extent of my ability is first aid, okay? I volunteer at the hospital. I signed up to volunteer June 2019, so I've done it for like 10 months now. And I wanted to basically just say from a volunteer's point of view, and obviously I go to the hospital weekly, I have kind of seen the change that coronavirus has done to the hospital. Although I'm not there on the front line and I'm not there every day, I have seen a difference, and I thought that as obviously I have YouTube as a platform, then it might be interesting for you guys to hear what those differences have been and what it's like to work there now. So with all of that out of the way, as I said, I have volunteered at the hospital for about 10 months. I volunteer at York Hospital because I'm at the University of York. So I only ever really go on one ward, which is like my ward, I suppose. And it is the Acute Medical Unit, AMU. So AMU is an interesting one because you get people from all over the place. So we can have referrals from GPs, your general practitioner, your normal doctor, for people that have an acute illness. So an acute illness is something that's serious, but something that you can recover from. It's not like a chronic illness that you will never sort of overcome. So yeah, if your GP thinks something's wrong, they can refer you straight to the hospital and then you come to AMU. Or if you're already in hospital or you've come to A&E or something, then you can then be like kept in AMU that way. So people in AMU can basically be a range of ages with a range of different illnesses and needing different treatments. So for me, I obviously want to go into the medical field, so it's really interesting to see. Like normally we would get anything from drug and alcohol addiction, gastrointestinal bleeding, breathing problems to heart problems, asthma, and just general acute illnesses in elderly patients. So there is quite a lot, and there are different people that kind of come in each week that range from anything from like normally like 20 to up to like 100. So you get a wide range of people that come in. AMU is actually split into two different wards. There's Ward 21, Ward 22. Essentially, I think there's about 58 beds in total. In the ward that I primarily work on, we have 29 beds. I'm trying to count. I think it's 29 beds. So there's like 4 main wards that have up to 6 beds in, and then there's 5 private rooms. The private rooms are normally used for when people have like respiratory problems, and even if it's just something like the flu, because there are a lot of vulnerable patients on that ward, they normally get put in a private room so they don't like infect other people. And then like everybody else sort of in the main wards, and then normally split like male in one ward and females in others, but sometimes if they're like too busy they aren't. And essentially people are only ever really on that ward for 24 or 48 hours. The purpose is that medical professionals with acute medical training will assess them, they will put up a treatment plan, whether that will be to discharge them home with some sort of plan or put them in a specific ward in the hospital. So we're kind of like, I like to think of it as like a holding ward, like we'd hold them, do some tests, and then you put people where they need to be after that. So that's kind of background to the ward. What I then do on the ward when I volunteer, the first thing I do is I go and do the tea and coffee round, and that gives you a good opportunity to like meet all of the patients that are on that ward that day, speak to them, kind of get an idea as well for what they might be in for. And especially in hospital, they normally have charts behind them, so it will say like, the name, age, whether they have any special requirements, and sometimes it also lists like what their illnesses or issue is why they're in. And then once I've done that, then I go and help the HCAs, which are the healthcare assistants, do the food round, which again is a nice way to like bounce back and see everybody, because you can see the whole ward within like half an hour. And also it's a good chance to speak to the HCAs who have been on that ward all day, and they kind of like fill me in on what's happened, who's been discharged, what might have happened that day, which is kind of interesting to hear too. And then after that, it's just general like helping patients with anything they might need, sitting talking to people, helping the nurses if they need anything, cleaning up, just general duties. It does depend week by week of what needs to be done. Sometimes they're like, yeah, there's not really much done, it's a quiet day, you can go early. Sometimes it's like, well, if you want to stay, you can stay, and I always stay. So that's kind of the role of what I do. And that's kind of all what I would normally do pre-corona. Now corona's happened, it's very different. very different. The first thing that I noticed was different is that I literally walked to the main hospital entrance and I was greeted by bouncers, or like security, I guess you could call it, not bouncers, you know what I mean? And they were asking me, you know, whether I was visiting or whether I was staff. And people that were visiting had to say who they were visiting, what ward they're on, and then they would be advised whether the ward was closed or not. And as staff, I had to show my pass. It felt like you were going through an airport. So then I walked in and I have to sign in to say that obviously that I'm there for that shift. And that is in the main entrance of the hospital, which normally is really busy. There's like a Costa, I think it's like a WH Smith kind of like shop, and then there's seats which probably hold about 100 people. Normally all those seats are full, people are queuing to go to Costa and get a drink, or they're coming in and out of the shop to get food and things. And when I went, there was one person on the reception desk and then one other person there just sitting. It looked like they were waiting for a taxi or waiting for a way to get home, because they were like, you know, they weren't like walking around or anything. So basically, it was dead. Then when you actually go into the main building of the hospital and you actually get onto the corridors that link the wards, that's when it's obviously a lot busier and a lot more like it would be. Like normally you would see a 50-50 mixture of normal people like visiting or potentially having like checkups or leaving the hospital, and then staff. Now it's purely staff, and I would say probably like 1% of normal people. So the restaurant on site now is for staff only, which is to limit the disease, I suppose, to stop people going and congregating there in groups. On the flip side, it feels normal because all the staff that are there, like doctors, nurses, HCAs, porters, whatever they are all jolly and acting like, you know, it's all fine and the camaraderie is there. And everyone's like, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you, da da da. But then on the flip side, they're like rushing about and you know why you're all there, you know? So it's weird, it's a weird vibe. So then anyway, so I made my way through the hospital, go onto my ward. So on my first shift, the first thing that I saw when I went to my ward basically told me that this was not going to be a normal shift. And I did anticipate that it would be hectic, and I thought that because obviously we're a ward that are normally connected to A&E, perhaps we might have an influx of patients. I've known it before when there are, you know, people on like stretchers and stuff, like an ambulance crew queuing to get into our ward, and it's just we have no beds and it's like hectic. So I kind of pictured something similar to that, and it was not that at all. I mean, it was very chaotic because as soon as I walked in, so our ward is probably like, I don't know, 40-50 feet in length, with all the officer rooms and stuff coming off it, and the whole corridor was full from like floor to ceiling with boxes, big cages, crates full of medical supplies, full of equipment. Basically everything was just stacked up in the corridor, and I was like, is someone having a clear out of the storeroom? Like, what is happening? Why is all this stuff here? By the time I like got on the ward, put all my stuff down and like scrubbed in or whatever you want to call it, and sort of resumed my job, that's kind of when I started to realise like a lot of things had changed. Normally when I obviously start doing like the tea and food round and things, there are people about and they'll be like, hey, how's it going? And then they'll fill me in as I'm like preparing the food and drink. There was no one. There was a lot of people about, but no one to sit there and go, hey, how's it going? You know? So you could tell people were busy. Then when I went into the kitchen, which is surprisingly very clean despite the chaos, all the cupboards had been moved, like every single thing. Like it was so weird. Like I was thinking, have I walked onto the right ward? Because every time I'd open a drawer or like a cupboard to try and find what I needed, it just like wasn't there. Everything being completely moved. So I was like, right, okay. Then I obviously like did my like normal rounds and stuff that I would do, and I realised that as I went round we had a lot less patients and a different type of patient than I would. So normally of there's 29 beds, there would be typically 23 to 26 probably patients on that ward. People are normally in and out all the time. On my shift, there normally would be like one person every 20 minutes, half an hour, either being discharged or being like referred and coming in. So it's normally like quite a fast turnaround. Whereas the ward now is very like static because the patients there are not the typical patients that would be on the ward. So wards 36 and 39 have been moved to us, which is 22. So ward 36 is an acute stroke unit and ward 39 is stroke rehabilitation. So all the patients that were there were more elderly. They obviously had all suffered from having a stroke and were all there long term because they were having rehabilitation for having had a stroke. So it was quite a contrast within the first few minutes to see, like, normally I have patients from all age ranges, all different types of, you know, medical illnesses, and now it's a specific type of patient at a pretty much specific age. So that was kind of interesting to see the contrast. In terms of patient numbers, as I said, we'd normally have like the high 20s. There was, I think, 11 people. So we're literally at a third capacity, which is so strange as well to see. I literally walked into one of the like rooms, which holds obviously 6 beds, and it was empty. And I was like, right, okay. It's only ever happened once before, and sadly the reason why it was empty before was because everybody on that ward died that day, which to be honest was like pretty traumatic to think that that's the only reason that it's empty. So staff wise, numbers have changed quite differently as well. So HCAs, which are healthcare assistants, normally there's about 4. There was probably about 4, I would say. Then in terms of nurses, there's probably like 5 or 6, I would say. And there was probably about 10, I think, a good 10. And then like senior nurses is like 1 or 2, that was still the same. And then doctors, there's normally 4 doctors or 3 doctors and a consultant. And there was 1 doctor. So it was quite clear that the doctors had been moved elsewhere to like presumably the front line. And then, you know, there's more influx of nurses to take care of patients. And also there were a lot of nurses that had just been qualified. Now, I know the government said that they were going to like move up medical students and nursing students who were like in their final year, but I didn't realise how fast that had actually like happened, because there are a lot of nurses there that pretty much had only just started really, and were asking me things, and I'm like, I'm not qualified. I also was told that there have been a lot of changes in the A&E and like emergency department. So normally in an emergency department, you have 3 sections. You have minors, majors and resus. So the minors are things like cuts and bruises, things that ideally you can patch up there and then send them home. The majors are things that require like medical attention and you might need to be admitted, but you also might be able to go home. And then you have resus, which are the patients that are the sickest and do need medical attention to help, you know, save their life. So that's the normal structure of A&E, whereas now they've kind of split it in half. So there's like 2 A&Es, and it's kind of like 1 for everyone that is coming in with coronavirus or suspected coronavirus, and 1 for like everybody else. And they've termed the 1 for everybody else like the clean side, you know, not to say that anybody with coronavirus is like dirty or whatever, but it's kind of to say that people with and without coronavirus. And they were saying that if you were on, you know, the clean section, you will never be able to go to the corona section for that shift, and vice versa. So it is very segregated. It's weird to think how fast the whole A&E is transformed. And obviously I've seen a lot of videos and seen a lot of photos, and even people, doctors and things, walking about the hospital in the gear. The NHS is completely reformed really in the matter of days. On the one hand, it's really like, it makes you really proud to see. It makes you, you know, proud to be British and that we're resilient and capable of doing that, but also it's kind of sad to understand the context and the circumstance of why that's happened and the ramifications of what's going to happen from it. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the main differences of what's happened at the hospital. I wanted to end this video to say that, you know, I've really enjoyed volunteering. Volunteering has been one of the best things that I've done. It's the highlight of my week. I genuinely really love going into, you know, the hospital and working for the NHS. So right now the government are looking for volunteers. So I'll put the link in the bio to sign up to be a volunteer. I know we're on lockdown right now in the UK, but there are still things you might be able to do, whether you're self-isolating or not. There are a multitude of roles, whether they are out in the community and driving and things, or whether they are just like on the phone. So if you live in England, the UK, please, you know, look into that, because it's definitely worthwhile doing. Or, you know, after this all blows over and when they start hiring volunteers at the hospital again, I would definitely recommend put your name forward. You know, you could even just do it for a couple hours a week, and it makes the difference for the care that can be given on that ward, and also it's a difference to like you as a person. Like I feel like I've really grown from the process, and as I said, I've really enjoyed it as well. I also want to say that you know, obviously I'm not a doctor, I'm not medically trained, but there are some really good videos coming out right now by actual doctors who are on the front line. So if you want to hear about those, one of my favourites that I have seen is by Dr. Alex, yep, the guy off Love Island. I will put his video in the link in bio as well. And he has basically, you know, spoken all about what it's like being on the front line, being in the emergency department, treating coronavirus, and also like the testing kits and things like that, which I think are just really good insights to have from somebody who's keeping it real. I hope you like this video. If you have any questions about the virus or, you know, volunteering at a hospital, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you on Saturday. I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.